Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Very good evening to you. I'm Polly Middlehurst and you're watching GB News Live on this New Year's Day. It is January the 1st, 2022, and we have the latest news and discussions on the topics that hopefully matter to you. We're going to be speaking to the latest sporting heroes to be named on the New Year's honours list, and we also have the latest on the fallout from last night's rather disrupted New Year's Eve celebrations. But first, let's get right up to date with the latest news headlines. Here's Karen Roberts.
Thank you, Polly. These are your latest news headlines. Health bosses are warning the next few days are crucial in the fight to reduce the impact of the Omicron variant. Chris Hopson, the chief executive of NHS providers, says the health system is under arguably more pressure compared with this time last year. COVID measures must be an absolute last resort in 2022. That's according to the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid. Over 162,000 COVID-19 cases have been recorded in England. That's a new daily record. Medical experts leading the UK's battle against COVID are among more than 1,200 people who have been recognised in the Queen's New Year Honours list. Knighthoods have been given to the UK's Chief Medical Advisor, Professor Chris Whitty, and his Deputy, Jonathan Van Tam, as well as the Chief Medical Officers for Scotland and Wales for their efforts in the fight against COVID. Meanwhile, Sir Patrick Vallance, the UK government's chief scientific advisor, has been elevated to Knight Commander of the Order of the Bath, and tennis player Emma Raducanu and diver Tom Daley will both receive MBEs. Separately from the main New Year honours list, Buckingham Palace has announced that Tony Blair will also receive awards from Her Majesty the Queen. The former Prime Minister has been made a Knight Companion of the Most Noble Order of the Garter. One of his former cabinet ministers, Lady Amos, joins him and has become the first ever black member of the order, while the Duchess of Cornwall has been recognised for her contribution to the monarchy, being appointed Royal Lady of the Most Noble Order of the Garter. The official state funeral for Archbishop Desmond Tutu has taken place in South Africa. Mourners gathered in Cape Town to pay their respects to the late Nobel Peace Prize winner, who for years fought against racial injustice. President Cyril Ramaphosa, who delivered the main eulogy, paid tribute to his friend.
If Archbishop Desmond Tutu were here, he would have said, hey, why are you looking so glum, so unhappy? He would have wanted to elicit a smile, a laughter from amongst all of us. That was the type of person that he was.
People gathered to hear London's Big Ben ring in the new year for the first time in 4 years last night, as much of the UK welcomed 2022 with subdued celebrations. Thousands usually watched the show, but the ongoing spread of Omicron meant many stayed away. It was an even quieter affair in Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland, where Edinburgh's world-famous Hogmanay party was called off. And Boris Johnson says he wants to maximise the benefits of Brexit this year. That's despite consumers being warned of fresh disruption due to new rules coming into force. From today, traders will no longer be able to delay completing full import customs declarations on goods entering the UK from the EU or other countries. Previously, they had a grace period of 175 days. But the British Frozen Food Federation has warned consumers to brace for disruption due to the change. That's your news update. I'll be back at the top of the hour with the latest headlines. Now let's return to Polly.
Karen, thank you. You're watching GB News Live with myself, Polly Middlehurst, this New Year's Day. And of course, one of the main stories today, the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, telling us the public must learn now to live alongside COVID in order to avoid restrictions returning. That comes as more than 162,000 new cases were reported in England and 154 virus-related deaths happened. The Health Secretary, however, reiterated that lockdowns would remain a last resort if the government needed it. Let's discuss that now. Joining us to discuss it is, to see if those new restrictions coming in, is Ben Everett, Conservative Member for Parliament for Milton Keynes North. Thank you for joining us, sir. Your reaction to the Health Secretary's comments today that new restrictions are a last resort, but they are nonetheless there?
Well, I fully agree. We've obviously we've probably had enough of the lockdowns and the restrictions as a country, where we've been through a lot, quite tired, and it really should be a last resort. We've made the call for to keep the country open during between Christmas and New Year, and it turns out, I think, cautiously to be the right call. So if we continue along this path of good data, then things all being well, everybody being sensible, we should manage to avoid restrictions and God forbid another lockdown. And
your reaction to the English government, if you like, acting in distinction from what happened in Scotland and in Wales. Do you think Boris Johnson took the right call by saying, looking at the data we have, we are going to let people enjoy New Year and there isn't enough data to lock us down?
Yeah, absolutely. It's bang on. It was the right call. I mean, obviously the governments of each of the nations see the same data, but it's down to the interpretation that you put on that data, and ultimately the call you make as well. So it's not just the health data, of course. It's factors such as the economy, such as pressures on mental health. All have to play a part in this. So yeah, it seemed like it was the right call, and we should start the new year in a very good position. I think we are unlocked, we are vaccinated, and it puts us well ahead of the curve when you compare us to some other European countries.
Do you have some sympathy with those in Wales and Scotland then that had to rely on the interpretations, as you put it, of their devolved governments?
Well, it's not for me to make the call that they have. But obviously, I'd much rather our people be free, our people be unlocked up, and making their own decisions. I think we've been through a lot as a country, We've learned a lot, and I think it's time to give responsibility back to our citizens, and certainly that seems to be what is happening in England.
We know Boris Johnson has a new baby and a little boy as well, and Christmas is an important time for families. But nevertheless, there is a public health emergency here. COVID cases have been skyrocketing, particularly the Omicron variant cases, and some saying the Prime Minister rather conspicuous by his absence. Should he have made more of an appearance, do you think, recently?
Well, he came up to Milton Keynes just this week to visit a vaccination centre. But you're absolutely right. He's got a new baby and a toddler and a country to run. If he had a couple of days off at Christmas, I wouldn't blame him.
Tell us what you think about those numbers of people who decided then from Scotland to go to England, particularly to Carlisle, for example, or those just across the border from Abergavenny to celebrate New Year's. Was that the right thing for those Welsh and Scottish citizens to do?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's you've got to play the rules, play by the rules, and as long as people are sensible, then everybody's welcome, of course. I'm quite happy that we're open. It's a good thing, and people behaving sensibly, doing testing, and then making sure they isolate if they test positive. It's the right thing to do.
So looking at Omicron now then, and the data that's starting to come through to us, and given the fact that the variant isn't as challenging as first feared, where does that leave our national strategy?
I think what we're seeing now is the virus behaving like a virus naturally would. So viruses tend to become milder, less severe, but also more transmissible. And over the course of certainly this particular variant that we've got now, that is traditional virus behaviour. So the government strategy appears to be working, and of course the call made on lockdown or not locking down, as it were, does reflect that. So we do appear to be in a better situation than we could have been. Obviously, we're not out of the woods yet, and we've said that so many times as well. So we do need to continue being sensible, but it does look a bit better than it could have done.
Looking at the data you've seen, would you say we're at the end of the beginning or the beginning of the end of those restrictions, or are we, if I can use a football analogy, in injury time, having to face up to the massive economic risk now that inflation is going to present us? Yeah,
and that's certainly well, to put it bluntly, we need a functioning economy to pay for the NHS. So we need to make sure that whatever we do, we keep we look after jobs, we look after cost of living, and we look after the businesses that kind of make our economy tick. So all of these decisions, as well as that hard data around hospital admissions and infections and ICU admissions, all plays into account. And it is a tough call. But we do need to keep the show on the road and make sure that everything functions.
Ben Everett, while you're here, we did introduce you as the Conservative MP for Milton Keynes North. Can I get a comment from you on the storming of an NHS facility where COVID testing was taking place by anti-vaxxers? They decided to barge in, disrupt what was happening, take away NHS equipment. What's your comment on that event, and what do you think should be done about it?
Well, it was absolutely outrageous. It's completely unacceptable, and there's no place for that kind of protest at all. So I hope the police throw the book at all the protesters and the people that trespassed in the testing centre. They were really abusive to the staff and the volunteers as well, and that's just not on. And fortunately for us, they seem to film themselves doing it. And so hopefully the police have got the evidence they need to take action where any criminality has occurred.
Ben Everett, we wish you a very happy New Year. Thanks for joining us on GB News.
Happy New Year to you. Thanks for having me.
Right then, so last night's announcement of the individuals due to be awarded honours brings up an important question. Is the system modern enough for us now? Is it fit for purpose? What sort of honours should be given out? Who should get them? To be made a member of the Order of the British Empire, or MBE as it's more commonly known, is meant to be a significant achievement. But are we trivialising the honours system by awarding those honours to people like Chris Whitty, who are simply doing their jobs, some are arguing? Are the references to empire, for example, outdated? Or is the system an important recognition of national achievement? Joining me now to discuss this is Andrew Roberts, the historian and monarchist. And we also have with us Graham Smith, CEO of the anti-monarchy group Republic. Welcome to you both. If I can start with you, Graham, is this New Year's Honours system appropriate, do you feel, in the 21st century?
No, I mean, the honours have always been there to curry favour. The monarchs years ago invented these things like knighthoods and so on, so that they could, wield power, curry favour. The power of patronage was very useful to them. And the politicians, since we've become democratic, have essentially taken that and carried on using it for that purpose. And it's a dreadful system, really. And I think that what's so sad about it is that there are loads of people who really deserve public recognition, and their public recognition gets diluted and gets relegated when all the headlines are about, multimillionaire movie stars getting an award for doing their job that they're well paid for, or civil servants getting their knighthoods that come with the job. It should be limited to people who have gone above and beyond any expectation in terms of service to their community and their country, or singular acts of bravery, and that should be it. And the political leaders should not be having a say in who those people are going to be who get it. And we also see the return, since David Cameron came to power, the return of political honours where MPs are routinely knighted. And again, this is totally inappropriate. One of the MPs, I believe, who's knighted this week, it sits on the committee that scrutinises the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister's giving them a gong. Now, that is clearly a conflict of interest, and there's clearly questions there about why that person got that knighted. So, the whole thing needs to be swept away. We need something which is modern, relevant, and which is going to genuinely reflect the people that really do deserve to be recognised. Because the other awful thing, which I think is quite offensive, really, is that the people that genuinely deserve it, they're the ones that get the MBE, the CBE, and sometimes the OBE, and the people that don't really deserve it get the knighthoods and the peerages. And I think that is completely back to front.
Could you be clearer about exactly what you mean? Do you think that the system isn't fit for purpose, as you first said, or do you think that you don't agree with the people who are honoured on your personal list of who should be honoured?
Well, I mean, this system is not fit for purpose. It should be scrapped. We should have an honours system, but the honours system should be, it shouldn't be mentioning empire, which is nonsense, and it does put some people off accepting them. And it should just award and honour people who have genuinely deserved it. The idea that we give knighthoods to movie stars and musicians and people doing their job with us in the civil service, it is nonsense. And I
see.
think there are lots of people,
so you're effectively saying,
done
then,
a
Graham,
lot
that
for charity during COVID that have really earned their honours, and they are being relegated below those who have simply been doing their job.
So you'd like to see the system abolished, but if it takes place, you think it should be fairer, and you'd like to see more ordinary people being honoured, would you?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I think we throw out too many honours. I mean, for some reason, they have a quota of around 1,000 honours to be awarded each time, and then they go looking for people to award them. I think this seems a little bit back to front. If people have been nominated, and if they are clearly, have done something which is extraordinary and which deserves national recognition, then give them an honour which is of equal status to all the other honours. It's that simple.
So it seems to you it's the unfairness of the system that you don't like. I ask you about this in more detail because I've just spoken to Jodie Cundy, CBE, a Paralympic gold medalist, and Chris Skelly, MBE, both of whom are delighted, were moved to tears, and whose families were moved to tears by this incredible honour. And both the recipients of these separate honours, neither of them criticised the title of the honour. They didn't mind it being called, the word empire being in there. Quite the contrary, they were absolutely flabbergasted and very proud to receive them.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure lots of people that received them are happy to do so. I don't know the details of individuals. I'm not going to comment on individuals, but I think that there are plenty of people that have refused them because of the title and because of the use of the word empire. There are plenty of people who are not in the running for honours that still are offended by the use of imperial titles. But let's be clear: the people that deserve them, great. They've been given awards that they deserve, and they should be very pleased and happy. But the problem is that there are loads of people there that do not deserve them, and loads of people that get them simply because of the jobs that they do, for which they're paid well. And the more serious problem is these are used as ways of, political manoeuvring. You offer an honour, you give an honour to curry favour, to get people on side, to keep people on side. I mean, David Cameron sacked a bunch of ministers halfway through his government, and he gave all of them a knighthood, bar one. And the only reason he didn't give that one a knighthood is because he already had one. And it's a very neat way to say, look, yes, I'm sacking you, but go to the back benches, and here's a knighthood, to keep you happy. This power of patronage should not be in the hands of our political leaders.
Graham Smith, for the moment, thanks very much indeed. That's Graham's take on it all. What about if we talk to a historian? Andrew Roberts has been waiting very patiently. Thank you for waiting, Andrew. We just wanted to hear what Graham had to say first. Your reaction to the New Year's Honours list, is it fit for purpose? Should people be bothered about the word empire in there?
Oh, it's certainly fit for purpose. It's a fantastic system. The idea that we're able to thank people for their contributions to public life in the way that we do, with, in this case, 166 pages of names from people up and down the country who've done the most extraordinary things for the country, with about 20% of them going to people who've been involved in fighting COVID, is a wonderful opportunity for the country to use this, is admittedly, as Graham said, ancient system. Some of it goes back to Saxon times, others to 1725 and 1818. So people know what they are getting. It's all part of a wonderful, long historical tradition. And as far as the empire is concerned, all we're saying with the phrase "the Order of the British Empire" was that the British Empire was a altruistic thing that people should look up to. I believe that that's true. I think that 90% of the people in the British Empire were lucky to be in the British Empire. The alternatives were an awful lot worse at the time. And so it is something that we should be proud of and that people should be happy to get as an honour.
What about Tony Blair being awarded the Order of the Garter? Quite a controversial decision, don't you think?
I don't think so at all. I mean, it might be a controversial decision for people who hate Tony Blair, but actually prime ministers who have got to the very top of what Disraeli called the greasy pole over decades, indeed hundreds of years, have been awarded this thing. The idea that he should, for some reason, be the one person who doesn't get it seems to me ludicrous. He was Prime Minister of this country for 10 years, and so therefore he very much deserves it. If people for hundreds of years have got it, then I think that he should get it too.
Graham, can I get a comment from you on that? Tony Blair, Order of the Garter, what do you think?
To be honest, I think it's perfectly ridiculous that we have something called the Order of the Garter in the first place. They say the Queen gives this thing out. I mean, the Queen doesn't do anything at all without getting it signed off by the cabinet. So it's curious as to why now, why him, why has this been done? I don't really care that much whether it's Tony Blair or anybody else. I mean, he isn't any longer in Parliament. I think the more serious question is why are MPs currently serving being given knighthoods? Because, as I said, that is a very clear power of patronage which should not be in the hands of politicians. The whole system should be independent of politicians, whilst answerable ultimately to Parliament. Tony Blair, it's also silly and meaningless. I mean, people wanted to be called Sir. I think probably ought to go up a bit. But, I think that there's a far more serious aspect to this than someone getting it because they were Prime Minister for 10 years.
Graham Smith, CEO of Republic, we thank you for your opinions. Similarly to Andrew Roberts, historian, both of you for talking to us today here on GB News. And a Happy New Year to you both.
Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up later on in the programme, we'll be speaking to the writer and broadcaster JB Blackett about the restrictions in Scotland. First, though, let's get an update on this unseasonably mild weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry with clear spells for many, though showers affecting the northwest and far southeast. Let's take a look at the details. A dry end to the day across the southwest. Cloud will thicken from the west later though, ahead of showers or longer spells of rain arriving overnight. Mild too. Scattered showers across the southeast will continue as we head into the evening, so it will be cloudy and in places damp at the end of the day. Across Wales, a dry start to the night is expected with some clear spells, and it will remain mild. Here too, showers will return overnight though. It will be a dry evening across the Midlands with variable amounts of cloud and the occasional clear spell. It will remain breezy throughout though, and mild for early January. After a mainly dry start, cloud and a band of showers will push slowly southeastwards across northeast England this evening, though they will ease as they do so. Showers will also affect southern Scotland for a while this evening, some turning heavy. These will then clear southeastwards to leave patchy cloud, remaining windy and mild though. In Northern Ireland, afternoon showers will clear through to this evening to leave it dry with the occasional clear spell. It will be windy, especially on the northern coast, staying mild. Showers that could be heavy at times will push eastwards, affecting many areas overnight, remaining windy and mild.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join me, Mark White, here on GB News. For more than 2 decades, I've been at the sharp end of reporting crime and security at home and abroad. From the scourge of terrorism to the fight against violent crime and the deepening small boats crisis in the Channel, they're issues you rightly care about, and so do I. As GB News Home and Security Editor, my focus will be on the stories that matter to you.
Good evening. I'm Polly Middlehurst. You're watching GB News Live. Now, the group which represents the UK hospitality sector says Welsh businesses have been hit significantly worse than those in England due to the loss of New Year's business. Mark Drakeford, the Welsh First Minister, shut all Welsh nightclubs and the rule of six applied for all hospitality venues in the Principality. The new rules, according to UK Hospitality, have cost the Welsh section of the industry hundreds of millions of pounds, and the support by the government wasn't really enough to save many of them. Let's look a little more into this and talk to somebody who is very close to this, the owner, in fact, of the Hand at Llanymon, yes, in Llangollen. Jonathan Greatrex joins us on GB News. Jonathan, a very warm welcome to you. Your reaction then and your feelings this New Year's Day after that very quiet New Year's Eve in Wales last evening.
Good evening, Polly. Yes, it was very odd. It was very strange. We had about 13 people in our bar last night. On any other New Year's Eve, we'd be looking to have anything between 80 and 100. We could have probably had a couple more in, but to be honest with you, a lot of people just thought, we're not going out. And this has really hit an industry at probably the worst time of year. I mean, these are some of the lowest paid people. I always say industry, it's slightly disingenuous. We're not really an industry, we're a collection of small businesses. And I just think it was staggering, it's bewildering. I mean, we're kind of used to living with Mr. Drakeford's bewildering rules, and let's forget that this time last year we were prohibited from buying children, Christmas presents for our children. So it's been a sort of strange time, it really has.
What would you have done then if you were the First Minister of Wales?
Well, I think the one thing I would have recognised is that hospitality is very, very safe. Our job is to keep people safe. It's to not poison people. Forget COVID. We've got salmonella, listeria, E. coli, allergens. Our job is to keep people safe in a hospitality setting, and we've done that successfully when we've been allowed to be open. So I would have probably trusted us to do our jobs, probably without intervening. There were no real interventions in any other area other than hospitality, and I think we were a very, very easy target, certainly for these restrictions.
What about the pressure, though, on the hospitals, the doctors and nurses, those working in ICU, the clinicians who are wearing the PPE for 12 hours a day, working against staff absences because of the spread of the Omicron variant amongst staffing levels? What would you say to them about how would you justify keeping pubs open in the face of that kind of pressure?
Well, I think as Ben Everett said earlier, economy and health, they're not mutually exclusive. They are symbiotic, and without the taxes that we generate, and you think we're a very small business here, I will hand over somewhere in the region of about £250,000 a year to the revenue in various guises on every single year, and that pays for an awful lot of nurses' salaries. And I think we can't overlook the actual physical contribution that the hospitality makes to the NHS in this country. It's very easy to sort of overlook that, and I think it's very important to understand that somehow our wonderful NHS has got to be paid for.
You're in Llangollen. Do you know anybody from your area that went across the border last night to take advantage of the lack of restrictions in England?
Certainly, I would say probably the vast majority of my customers under 24 sort of hot-footed it across the border to either Chester or to Oswestry. So, yeah, and again, that's a slight misnomer because, are they bringing the coronavirus back into the area? Would they be more safely managed in a more isolated community? I think, we've been asking, as an industry, the First Minister for the data that led him to make the decisions that we're now enduring. It's been about 9-10 days, and he still hasn't come up with that data. So we'd like to see, what we'd like to do is work with Welsh Government, but at the moment we're given these sort of diktats that we've got to sort of adhere to on a daily basis, and it's quite hard work.
So getting back to the business lessons from this then, or experiences, should Welsh businesses be better supported than they are in the UK, in England rather, given that they had to endure last night's empty bars and clubs?
Well, I mean, let's look at this point of view. In Wales, the hospitality sector employs 135,000 people. Now, a lot of those people are on zero-hour contracts, like it or not. So a lot of them will have simply had all of their shifts cancelled for the last few weeks. And those are people who have got food to put on the table. They've got presents to buy for their children, who have had no income whatsoever as a result of this. And let's not forget, there's no more furlough. That's gone. So these are people who need to be looked after. I've looked after my staff throughout all of this. I've made sure that wherever possible they were paid, even if I wasn't getting the money. But we've really got to not lose sight of the fact that there are individuals who are having no money at the end of the week in their pay packet as a result of this. And that's really sad.
So just lastly then, Jonathan, music to your ears then to hear Sajid Javid talking today about having to learn to live with this virus now that we know Omicron is, it seems anyway, weaker.
Well, I mean, I'll take the one thing I've learned throughout this pandemic is to take these things with an enormous pinch of salt. It certainly seems the data with regards to Omicron is very positive, and thankfully, the hospital admissions and the ventilation cases seem to be lower. So that's fantastic news. It would be brilliant, of course, if we could get back to doing what we've always done, and that's safely look after the general public day in, day out, and make them happy.
Jonathan Greatorex in Llangollen, thank you very much for your time today and a Happy New Year.
Thank you.
You're watching GB News Live. We've heard one view from Wales. After the break, we're going to hear about the situation in Scotland, where thousands of New Year revellers, in fact, headed south to England and its open nightclubs. That's coming up in a moment. But first, here's the news.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Well, last night, Scots made the journey across the border into England to enjoy a restriction-free night of fun in England for New Year's Eve. Nicola Sturgeon in December, reintroducing curbs to control the spread of the Omicron variant of COVID. Nightclubs were forced to close north of the border, and pubs and other hospitality venues selling alcohol were only currently allowed to offer table service. There has been some criticism. It's been directed at the Scottish Government for both risking the hospitality sector, but also the cultural sector as well. We know hundreds of Hogmanay celebrations had to be cancelled as a result of the new rules, leaving many forced, some would say, to travel to celebrate their traditional holiday. Well, joining us now to look at this is the entertainment promoter Donald MacLeod. Thanks for joining us, Donald. Your experience last night, rather quiet?
Well, I'm sad to say I got rather burst, as they would say up here at the house. Yeah, but very quiet. We only had a couple of friends round, and yeah, let off fireworks, and yeah, brought in the new year as well as we could.
So not a total disaster then. Did you know, though, people who didn't have...
I don't know about that. The way I'm feeling today, it was a total disaster.
But did you know people who weren't as confident as you were about managing to bring in 2022 in that way and decided to take the decision to go down to England?
Well, I know of hundreds of younger kids and some families went down south to celebrate Hogmanay. As we called it up here, Hogmanay. There was nae Hogmanay in Scotland. Really were celebrating it, and it's been a disaster for the hospitality sector of Scotland. The cancellation of events, especially in Edinburgh, where it's never more acutely felt with the world famous celebrations there being cancelled. And that's like £40 million it's reckoned to be valued at, and employs 1,000 people, and that was the last impact survey I checked. So yeah, that was lost, and the streets were empty, and clubs or pubs that were wanting to, if they're wanting to claim some of the sort of grants or funding that's available, they had to shut their doors by midnight and have nobody on the premises after midnight. So right on the bells, out. For a lot of places. So the streets were just empty, and most people, I would imagine, are celebrated at home, which is the very thing that the Scottish Government were wanting to avoid, But it was sad. It's just been sad. I just hope that this year we don't make the same mistakes, as, the economy just can't keep bouncing up and down like this. It's just hopeless.
And speaking to fellow publicans and entertainment promoters, how many cancellations are you looking at, and what sort of number could you put on that? I heard you say £40 million. I don't know where you got that figure from, possibly just for Edinburgh.
Yeah.
But what about the wider industry, Scotland-wide? What sort of numbers are we looking at there? Do you have them?
Yeah, well, the 40 million comes from an impact study. I'm looking at 2018. It was carried out for Edinburgh Council, and it was reckoned to be 40 million. That event alone brought into the city. Obviously, and the employment opportunities were there, employed part-time and full-time 1,000 people. But remember, this is a £5 billion sector in Scotland. It's 150, 160,000 full and part-time jobs. Also, it's not just nightclubs. I keep going on about this. It's the restaurants, it's the pubs that fill the nightclubs, it's the live music venues, and all the support services that to put a show on. You're looking at your technicians, you're looking at your freelancers, your sound engineers, you're looking at your taxi drivers, your hairdressers. They've all been heavily impacted since the scare started on the 9th of December. That's when Public Health Scotland went rogue and basically put out the public health message: don't go out, there is a deadly virus about. And most people, and as you've seen in England, have picked up on that and stayed away and stayed indoors. Thankfully, though, the Scottish Government have put in a package of measures of funding to see us through. Hopefully the 3 weeks, but is 3 weeks, 6 weeks, is it 6 weeks, 9 weeks? We don't know. And the longer this goes on, the more and more people are going to fall by the wayside, and that's tragic.
It is tragic, as you describe, and you describe it so well. It's heartbreaking, but I suppose it is a public health emergency. If you have a car crash and you need an ICU bed, the idea is that because those beds aren't blocked with people who have COVID, that you'll be able to get that treatment. If you have cancer, you'll be able to get treatment. Do you see the other argument, the counter-argument, that in order for public health services not to be overstretched and unable to cope, this is what we've had to sacrifice?
Yes, of course we see the other argument. And you remember, we take a duty of care very, very seriously for our punters, for the public. We've always supported public health measures, and the way in the beginning, fully behind it all. But if what we're against is this sort of sinister dropping, almost by stealth, keeping people away without talking fully to the industry at the start, not putting the measures or funding in place at the start, and then not reacting as quickly as they should when they shut down the place, when they find out that the virus is mild and that the ICU beds are not getting filled up, the mortality rate is not going through the roof, and the hospital admissions are not either. And I mean, we are, I think, as you saw in South Africa, they've lifted all the restrictions there. We should have been looking more seriously at that evidence before jumping the gun. And England, Westminster have done, but sadly for Westminster, for the English publicans, a lot of them that weren't on the borders of Wales and Scotland, they are not getting the funding as required at the moment, and they desperately need it. I would want, regardless of politics, this needs a four-nation approach. It needs all the leaders to agree one course of action instead of sowing the seeds of confusion that happen when you have various leaders going off at different junctures. Wales different from Scotland, Scotland different from Ireland, everybody different from England.
Well, we wish you the very best, of course, in recovering from this. Our commiserations to you that you've had to put up with this, and let's hope 2022 will be a better year for you. Donald McLeod,
thank you, and Happy New Year to you.
Thank you. You're watching GB News Live, and now let's talk about a TV special which is reuniting members of the Harry Potter cast. It's going to hit screens tonight, 2 decades after the first film cast a spell on audiences across the world. It's called The Return to Hogwarts, and it's a reunion which sees the actors Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson and Rupert Grint reminiscing about the 10 years it took to film the franchise. The actors who also return alongside the Golden Trio include James and Oliver Phelps, Bonnie Wright and Tom Felton. Let's take a look at a snippet of the trailer. Well, let's talk now to entertainment reporter Stephanie Tecci, who's with us in the studio. First of all, Happy New Year to you,
Happy
Stephanie.
New Year
Great
to you
to see you once again. This special that we're going to see, your thoughts on that? And I suppose we've got to talk about J.K. Rowling. She's not in it. But first of all, let's talk about the reunion itself. A good idea broadly?
It's definitely, you know what, 2021 was the year of the reunions. We saw it with Sex and the City, we saw it with Friends, we even saw it with Love Island. So for Harry Potter being such a franchise, big franchise worldwide, this is what people want to see. I don't think people are ever ready to say goodbye to the characters or the story, and this is monumental. 20 years on since, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stones first hit the screens, and it's just been this love story between us and Harry Potter. So to see the cast members 20 years later and hearing their experiences, it's what we've all been waiting for.
So that's what it is it? It's a collection of reminiscences about how they first started, what the filming was like?
The highs, the lows, because if you see all these three main characters like Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, Rupert Grint, they were only about 10, 11, 12 when they started this franchise, and they filmed 8 films. So, from them being children to now being people such as Alan Rickman, Helen McCrory, all the cast members who've passed on and the kind of influence they had on them while they was filming it.
So the highs and the lows?
Open about her crush on one of the cast members.
I saw that. Yeah, so she said, I just fell in love with him, didn't she? Yeah.
So she was quite open about that. You hear Daniel Radcliffe as well. He says he's been in the money since he's been filming this show, filming the films as well. So it was quite interesting to hear that and see how things have changed as well. And them going back to Hogwarts, much older as well, was quite funny to see that as well. But the big elephant in the room was J.K. Rowling was not there. Producers of this reunion say, they had sufficient footage of her from 2019 in interviews, but, a lot of hearsay is, she's been quite controversial with her views on the trans community. So people are like, is that why she wasn't, featured in there? And a lot of the cast have been open, objectifying against her and her thoughts about it. But she says that's not the case. But again, it would have been good to see her because
Did it matter that she wasn't included?
I think obviously you see archive footage of her, so they filled in the gaps, and the cast do mention her as well. But I guess it still remains a big elephant in the room. Is it all peaceful between them and J.K. Rowling?
Does it matter?
I think it does, because I think it's been quite a big talking point over the past few months, where you can't hear J.K. Rowling's name now without, you know, her views on the trans community and stuff. And it's almost ineffectively been like she's been cancelled for such views. And whether the franchise are trying to distance themselves between her and that, it becomes more evident when she's missing from things like that.
Are they trying to distance themselves from the controversy and focus on the product?
Yeah.
And the reunion, this 2-hour special,
yeah,
you know, denoting the highs and the lows, doing all the storytelling, hearing from the actors? Or do you think that if we started getting into trans-exclusionary radical feminism, it might be a slight distraction from the franchise?
Yeah, it does. And I think it's always going to be a slight distraction, because how do we kind of talk about this big franchise and miss the woman who's created it, kind of thing? And no matter what people say, people are always going to think it's because of her views. But I think as well, it goes to show how the franchise has become bigger than J.K. Rowling many years with all the different films. So I think in a weird way, they'll be able to go on without her.
So it's a 2-hour special.
Yeah.
It's on Sky Showcase.
Yes, tonight from 8 p.m.
From 8 p.m.
Yeah.
Does the 2 hours whip by? Were you gripped?
It's almost 2 hours, 1 hour. It does go really quick. It's full of theatrics, and you're kind of hooked with so many different of the actors hearing what they've got to say. So today is the perfect day for it to come on, and we can only hope and pray that maybe one day there'll be another Harry Potter reunion film for us to watch.
What about the critics? Mixed reviews, I hear.
Yeah, some people are saying they're just kind of jumping on the bandwagon because, you know, we've seen it with Friends, we've seen it with Sex and the City, and it's just like, oh, what else have you guys got to say, the critics? But then I think most people, again, have been waiting to hear these actors speak about their experiences. So it's always the right thing to do.
And you'll be watching it again tonight? Does it bear a second viewing?
I've got my popcorn ready, definitely. I don't know how long it's going to be. It's probably going to be another 20 years till we see another reunion. So it's good to kind of watch it today and then learn some things we didn't know about Harry Potter.
What was your favourite bit in it?
Oh, my gosh. I think my favourite bit was Daniel Radcliffe just talking about the money he's made. And then also he kind of opens up how he was quite angry about one scene where it was going to be Emma Watson and Rupert Grint kissing, and he said he was acting like a total misbehaving little boy. So I thought that was quite funny.
And will you be recommending it to others?
Yeah, I will be, because I think I've got so many Harry Potter fans in my life, both young ones and older ones, and I think it's just one of those things.
You must have grown up with it yourself.
I did. Again, I feel like I've grown up with these characters, so that's why it's so nostalgic to revisit these scenes and the whole franchise in itself. I don't know anyone in the world who doesn't know about Harry Potter.
It's an internationally famous brand,
it
isn't it?
is.
Stephanie Tecchi, it's great
Thank
to talk
you.
to you. 2 hours tonight.
Oh my gosh, get your popcorn ready.
Get your popcorn ready. Sky Showcase, 8 o'clock, I think it is.
Yes, it is.
It's a great pleasure to talk to you.
Take care.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too.
Now, as we've been hearing, it's certainly a happy new year for the hundreds of recipients of New Year's honours. Medical experts, politicians and sports personalities are among more than 1,200 people who've been recognised today. Another of those honoured this year is Northern Irish professional motorcycle racer Jonathan Ray. He competes in the Superbike World Championship and is a 6-time world champion. He's been awarded an OBE. Our reporter Doogie Beattie caught up with him. Take a look.
It's incredible, you know, no matter how many race wins or championships you earn, to be recognised outside your sport is always more rewarding. It's really nice, and you know, I've been very fortunate enough to go to Buckingham Palace before to receive my MBE, and you know, now to be on the honours list again to receive an OBE is incredible. You know, I'm so proud of the journey my family's been on, proud of motorcycling and Northern Ireland and the UK in general, that I've been able to fly the flag for motorcycling in the UK throughout the world, and it's a really, really nice honour to have.
Your last time you were there, it was Prince William that actually gave you, and he is a big motorcycle fan. Did he have anything to say to you?
You know, it's strange because I was one of the last to receive an award that day, and the awards are played on a big screen in the waiting area, and I was thinking how long he was taking talking to each and every individual of, you know, from the special services or charity work or sport. And when he came to me, I was so nervous to say, what's my conversation going to go like? But, you know, props to him. You know, he came away and said, you know, you're 3 times world champion, and I've been following your success. I like bikes. So as soon as he said he liked bikes, my nerves went away. We started talking about the bikes he had and, our kids and racing and whatnot, and it went by pretty quickly. But it's an incredible event. My mum and dad came together, and we went all together with my wife, and we had a really, really nice time. So looking forward to whenever the date may be that I get to go back there and receive my OBE.
That was Doogie Beattie talking to Jonathan Ray there. Stay with us here on GB News Live. In the next hour, we're going to be speaking to 2 more New Year's Honours recipients, asking how we can make sure we keep those New Year's resolutions as well, and even speaking to a star from Downton Abbey. All that still to come, but first let's take a look at this very mild weather we're having.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Well, as you can see, the southwest of England will begin Sunday dry with some bright spells, although there will be a bit of a southwesterly breeze which will take the edge off the mild feel. The southeast, cloudier with quite a bit of gusty wind blowing and 1 or 2 showers also on the cards there. Overnight rain just clearing to the east of Wales come morning, so it's looking fairly dry with the sun appearing in places. A different story though as we head northwest to in England, and the showery rain clearing from those parts. Drier conditions beginning to tuck in from the west. A pretty wet start likely as we head further north to the northeastern coast of the UK and Newcastle, and there the rest of the northeast of England as well. A few heavy bursts of rain are possible, although it will be lighter than everywhere else. Blustery showers likely towards the very northwest. Those southern and eastern parts of Scotland should get off to a fine start with a fairly mild temperature set and a little sunshine. And then for Northern Ireland, a mixed bag of weather. There will be some bright weather, but a few blustery showers. We're also looking at Scotland, aren't we? We're talking about Northern Ireland. Sorry about that. I've gone a bit too fast. There it is. Northern Ireland, a few blustery showers sweeping in from the west. Through the remainder of the morning, most eastern areas becoming dry and bright, whilst further showers feed in across the west of the country. And that's the big picture for you there for Sunday's weather.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello, Happy New Year and welcome to GB News Live with me, Polly Middlehurst. Thank you for joining us on this January the 1st, 2022. Lots coming up this hour. I'm going to be speaking to 2 Paralympians who've been recognised in the New Year's Honours list. We'll also hear from a star of Downton Abbey, And we'll be looking at how we can keep those New Year's resolutions, if you have any. But first, let's get bang up to date with the latest international and national news. Here's Karen Roberts.
Thank you, Polly. These are your latest news headlines. Health bosses are warning the next few days are crucial in the fight to reduce the impact of the Omicron variant. Chris Hopson, the chief executive of NHS providers, says the health system is under arguably more pressure compared with this time last year. COVID measures must be an absolute last resort in 2022. That's according to the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid. Over 162,000 COVID-19 cases have been recorded in England. That's a new daily record. Medical experts leading the UK's battle against COVID are among more than 1,200 people who have been recognised in the Queen's New Year Honours List. Knighthoods have been given to the UK's Chief Medical Advisor, Professor Chris Whitty, and his deputy, Jonathan Van Tam, as well as the Chief Medical Officers for Scotland and Wales for their efforts in the fight against COVID. Meanwhile, Sir Patrick Vallance, the UK government's chief scientific advisor, has been elevated to Knight Commander of the Order of the Bath, and tennis player Emma Raducanu and diver Tom Daley will both receive MBEs. Separately from the main New Year honours list, Buckingham Palace has announced that Tony Blair will also receive awards from Her Majesty the Queen. The former Prime Minister has been made a Knight Companion of the Most Noble Order of the Garter. One of his former cabinet ministers, Lady Amos, joins him and has become the first ever black member of the order, while the Duchess of Cornwall has been recognised for her contribution to the monarchy, being appointed Royal Lady of the Most Noble Order of the Garter. The official state funeral for Archbishop Desmond Tutu has taken place in South Africa today. Mourners gathered in Cape Town to pay their respects to the late Nobel Peace Prize winner, who for years fought against racial injustice. President Cyril Ramaphosa, who delivered the main eulogy, paid tribute to his friend.
If Archbishop Desmond Tutu were here, he would have said, Hey, why are you looking so glum, so unhappy? He would have wanted to elicit a smile, a laughter from amongst all of us. That was the type of person that he was.
People gathered to hear London's Big Ben ring in the new year for the first time in 4 years last night, as much of the UK welcomed 2022 with subdued celebrations. Thousands usually watched the show, but the ongoing spread of Omicron meant many stayed away. It was an even quieter affair in Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland, where Edinburgh's world-famous Hogmanay party was called off. Boris Johnson says he wants to maximise the benefits of Brexit this year. That's despite consumers being warned of fresh disruption due to new rules coming into force. From today, traders will no longer be able to delay completing full import customs declarations on goods entering the UK from the EU or other countries. Previously, they had a grace period of 175 days. But the British Frozen Food Federation has warned consumers to brace for disruption due to the change. Well, that's your news update. I'll be back at the top of the hour. Now let's return to Polly.
Karen, thanks very much indeed. Good evening to you. Hello and welcome to GB News Live with me, Polly Middlehurst, and a Happy New Year to you this January the 1st, 2022. You may have heard the New Year's honours list has been revealed today, as usual, and after last summer's glittering Tokyo Olympics, our sporting champions seem to lead the way. A huge number, in fact, of sporting heroes for us. 78 Olympians and Paralympians have been honoured for their services to sport. Well, one of those people recognised in the New Year's Honours list is Tom Dean, the first British male in a century to win 2 golds at the same Olympic Games. He joins us alongside another athlete recognised in the list, Rhys Dunn, who's brought home 5 medals, including 3 golds in the Tokyo Paralympics, I should say. Very warm welcome to you both, Tom Dean, Rhys Dunn. Tom, if I can talk to you first, your reaction in getting this honour?
I was so excited when I got the letter through the post. I wasn't actually in the country at the time. I was competing abroad, but I had a sneaky suspicion when I got the letter, on Her Majesty's honour through the post, what it might be. So it's been incredible, and my family were really proud, and I've had some absolutely lovely messages sent through to me today since the news has broken.
What does it mean to your family? You say your family are proud, but tell us, if you can, what the reaction was.
So my family have obviously played such a vital role in my swimming career, my success in the pool. They had a massive viewing party during the Olympic Games when I won my gold, and it blew up on Twitter and online. And they've just supported me over the last decade and a half of work, and that's what it's been. And I think when athletes such as myself and others are publicly recognised for the work we've put in and the years of hard graft through something like an MBE or in some cases of the athletes an OBE, then it's just the best possible thing you could ask for. And it just shows all the dedication and hours we put in, that went on behind the scenes, finally gets recognised. And it's the best thing I could ask for.
We're just looking at pictures of you giving your mum a kiss as you hold up your 2 gold medals there. It is a lifetime of dedication. Just describe to us, if you can, before we go on to Rhys, about some of those early mornings when you get up to do the practice at the local pool. What sort of time were you getting up, and what sort of regime did you have?
So I woke up at 5 a.m. for 5 mornings a week, and then 6:45 for the other 2. Well, I say I woke up. My mum woke up and woke me up and got me to the pool on time and got me to training. And I did that for 10 years while I was training at Maidenhead, our local swimming club. Not just myself, my 4 brothers and sisters as well. So that was a decade of doing that. Takes a real toll, and it's tough, but it's the hours that are required for the sport that we do. And since then, I've been at the Bath National Centre, where I'm training between 25 and 30 hours a week, in the pool, doing my land work as well. But luckily, I don't have to get up at the crack of dawn when I'm at the National Centre, but still a hard graft.
Tom, stay there, don't go away. We're going to talk to Rhys Dunn now. He's also a swimmer, a Paralympic swimmer. Rhys, you must be listening to that and recognising the same punishing regime, getting up early and getting yourself into the pool for practice.
Well, yeah, obviously it's difficult as well. Like 20 years of work for not even 7 minutes of swimming for me over my 5 events. So incredibly difficult, and the dedication that goes to all the early mornings.
So let's talk about you being on the New Year's Honours list then. When did you hear, and what was your reaction?
Obviously incredibly proud to be recognised outside of my own sport as well, and I think I heard about it not too long ago about the nomination. So,
and what has your family's reaction been?
I think they're incredibly proud as well, but I think obviously it's their achievement just as much as it is mine. Obviously, with the amount of years and the financial side that my parents put in for me when I was younger. Sorry, you've cut out for me.
Sorry.
I can't hear.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to GB News UK.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join me, Mark White, here on GB News. For more than 2 decades, I've been at the sharp end of reporting crime and security at home and abroad. From the scourge of terrorism to the fight against violent crime and the deepening small boats crisis in the Channel, they're issues you rightly care about, and so do I. As GB News Home and Security Editor, my focus will be on the stories that matter to you.
You're back with GB News Live, and apologies for our faults in sound just now. Interrupted our rather engaging interview with Tom Dean, Olympian, and Rhys Dunn, Paralympian, both swimmers, both talking to us from their homes and reflecting on the New Year's honours list that they have benefited from. Tom, sorry about that. I understand you couldn't hear me, nobody could hear me, so the best thing really was for us to go to a break, but we're back with you now. If I can get your thoughts on the Paralympic pathways for younger people who want, Olympic pathways for younger people who want to go through now with swimming, and the support network that's there for them. Do you think you're well supported enough for a young future Olympian who wanted to make a success of swimming?
Absolutely. I think if you look at the progression that British swimming has had since the London Olympics in 2012, you'll see the upward curve. You know, we judge our success on medal counts. You know, it's very black and white in that sense. But it's the work that goes on behind the scenes that really produces these results. And if you look at the progression over the last 10 years, which has been my developmental years, then my progress is almost lined up with British swimming's in that we've got a support network, we've got funding, we've got access to national centres. I believe awareness about coaching younger swimmers, and the best way to go about it is starting to be spread up and down the country, and that's a credit to the management team at British Swimming and the framework that they've put in place to allow development through age group years. So I think we're definitely in the heyday of British swimming, and they've really managed to change the sport around. If you look at the Olympics, you know, swimming is no longer the USA show. It's no longer dominated purely by America. Britain are a force to be reckoned with, and that's purely because of the last 10 years of work that British swimming have put in.
Your message to future Olympians might be watching you?
My message would be stick at it, commit to the hard work, and the results will come.
And I know that the British swimming and British Paralympic swimming work very closely together. You're all one big family. Of course, there are two routes for sporting achievement. But if I can ask you, Rhys Dunn, which is what I was asking you before we had to go to the break, do you think as a Paralympian your performance pathway was well supported enough for you to achieve what you've achieved? Do you think it could be better? Do you think it will be better?
I mean, obviously, I joined the para side of swimming very late on. I was 23, which is quite old for a para swimmer. But obviously, I never knew the pathway to originally take anyway, because I never really asked the right questions to the right people. But if you are, like have an impairment and fancy giving any para sport a go, you just got to look in the right places, do some research, and then see where it takes you, really.
Fantastic encouragement. Rhys Dunn, Paralympian, and Tom Dean, Olympian, both of you honoured today in the Queen's New Year's Honours List. Many congratulations to you both, and thank you so much for joining us on GB News, notwithstanding the slight error with sound there. Thank you both very much. Happy New Year.
Thank you too.
Well, one person who we haven't mentioned so far is the tennis superstar Emma Raducanu. To look at her amazing year and to update us on how COVID is continuing to affect the sporting calendar is broadcaster and writer Aidan McGee, who joins me now in the studio. Aidan, always good to see you. What an incredible year for this 18-year-old tennis player, taking the world by storm, the tennis world by storm.
I think you put it mildly there, actually, Polly. I'm so pleased that 4 months on from that incredible achievement, we're still talking about it. I was worried that with everything that's happening in sport and everything that's happening generally in the world, it might be brushed under the carpet to some degree. However, I look back now on what she did. She didn't drop a set. She came as a qualifier. I knew about her anyway. She lives in Bromley, which is my locality. Right?
That's your hood, is it?
It is my hood, yeah. So we knew that she had something special. There were problems at Wimbledon, obviously. But I don't think we will see another qualifier go abroad, especially from Britain, and win a Grand Slam from a qualifying rank in possibly the next 20 or 30 years. It's a once-in-a-generation thing. It was absolutely extraordinary. And she swatted away her opponent in the final there. And she didn't even play that badly. Yet you just knew when it came to the key points, there was no loss of nerve. There was no pressure getting to her. There was no wobbles or anything like that. She just saw it through to the end, and she was devastating. Anyone who thinks she's a flash in the pan needs to look again at the history of tennis players. We saw Pete Sampras back in 1990 when the US Open. We didn't hear anything from him for another 3 years until he won Wimbledon. He had to find his feet. He even had to adjust his backhand. He had to drop the double-handed backhand and go with the single-handed backhand on the advice of his coach if he really wanted to go to the next level. So there will be teething problems, and it won't be an easy path. It won't be a processional process for her to get to the top of the game, but she will win more Grand Slams. There's no doubt about that.
And what difference is it going to make to her to receive this honour as she has this year in the New Year's Honours List?
To be honest, probably not a great deal. I mean, knowing tennis players as I do, they are extremely focused. They tend to look back. In fact, I'm talking about all competitors, really. I spoke to Ryan Giggs many years ago, and I said, what about this gone? What about that gone? What about this honours? What about this particular honour, this individual award? He said something, even Premier League title, as he was saying, is something you look back at the end of your career, but at the moment they're going to Marks & Spencer's plastic bag up in the loft. So I'm not necessarily sure Emma Raducanu will take that route, but I do think that for now she's got bigger eyes on the prize right now. She's got bigger fish to fry.
What is she looking forward to?
I think Wimbledon has to be the big thing this year, if only in some ways to not just continue the progression she's made from the US, but also, let's be honest, she didn't perform well at Wimbledon last summer. She took some criticism. A lot of people, including Piers Morgan, of all people online, were saying that the pressure got to her, she wasn't ready. I think he was probably right, actually. I think she would probably concede that she was right. But to make that change, to make that transition, to come away from London and go abroad, I mean, Andy Murray won the US Open in 2012, but British successes in America in tennis are few and far between. For her to lift herself off the floor within 3 months and go to the US and win in Flushing Meadows, as I say, extraordinary.
It's not just about the sporting prowess, though, is it? It's not just about the routine, the practice, the regimen and the rest of it. It's being able to withstand the pressure. We saw our very own Tim Henman under an incredible amount of pressure to perform, and some say it did compromise his performance.
Yeah, it did. Listen, I think history judges Tim Henman a little bit harshly. He came from a regime or a system that was proven time and again to be the worst in the world at producing tennis players, and yet he got to 4 Wimbledon semi-finals. Cruel luck in 2001, obviously he lost against Egan, didn't it, when there was the rain delay. He also got to semi-finals at the French and at the US. So you talk about, the Australian. He was no mug. yes, key points. He probably didn't have the talent to get where he needed to get. To that, there's fine margins in sport. Even 20 years ago, Emma Raducanu doesn't have that problem. She can only beat what's in front of you. She's beaten some strong competitors and she's swatted everyone away, Polly. It was wonderful to see.
She could be a Martina Navratilova, Yvonne Goulon,
Who
Chris
knows?
Evert.
I'm not going to say that.
One of those names that we remember from the
Exactly.
past. Let's talk about the wider sporting calendar. Of course, hugely impacted by COVID, absences. I mean, we saw just even in the Premier League, 10 matches being cancelled one weekend. What is the rollout now looking like?
It's looking very tricky. I mean, the argument for the circuit break between the 15th of December and Boxing Day, which was propagated by the Brentford head coach Thomas Frank, I'm not sure that would have been a good idea, because with hindsight, you look at the problem. The problem now is that they've had to play all those fixtures at some point. They've actually done it already. I mean, if you think about it, 18 fixtures in the Premier League have been postponed. Only 3 have been rearranged. I mean, the other 15, we don't know when they're going to be. It's all easy to say, well, January's another month, but the FA Cup starts, then you're getting near the part where, or the point in the season where the top 6 have to, or whoever's involved in the Champions League needs to restart their campaign there. The Premier League campaign is already unrelenting as it is, 38 matches over the course of 9 months. The EFL calendar is even worse. I mean, my team, Queen's Park Rangers, I watched them play on Monday night. We hadn't played for 3 weeks. We looked jaded, but we have to play 46 games in a season. I mean, it's extraordinary. So something has to give.
Someone's going to have to strike out a number of games, is what you're saying.
Well, there's not much wriggle room. You look at the Carabao Cup, and David Moyes said the other night, after West Ham's game against Watford, he said, I'm not sure why the Carabao Cup has to be over 2 legs. Well, OK, that's fine. You can give him that and say, and he's not in that competition, by the way. He was just making a general kind of point. But if you drop one of the legs for the Carabao Cup and play it at a neutral venue, you're only saving 1 game. Some clubs at Burnley have got 3 games in hand over Newcastle. In fact, they've managed to finally play a game against Manchester United the other night and lost 3-1. Again, it's not good when you haven't played for 3 weeks because you're not match fit. So they didn't look good at Old Trafford. They lost 3-1, as I say. Now, even playing that game, they've still got 3 in hand over Newcastle or 1 below. So it starts to affect the competition. The reason we have the scheduling and the reason it's so tight is because you want to keep a situation where 1 to 20 in the Premier League and other leagues as well, you need to be playing. You don't want to have teams having more than 1 or 2 games in hand over another. We could see a situation next month where some teams could have 5 or 6 to play over the teams above them or below them, and that isn't good for competition because games in hand at this time of year, when the schedule is unrelenting, don't mean a great deal.
Aidan, we're running out of time. Your tips for 2022, what are you most looking forward to in terms of sporting excitement in the coming year?
I think England have a real chance in the World Cup for the football. I do, yeah. I mean, the people going on about the climate, but the stadiums inside there, air conditioned. We have a wonderful, wonderful group of players. You talk about Sterling, Grealish, Foden, Declan Rice at West Ham, outstanding young player. And I think that now might be their time. They got to the semi-final of the World Cup in 2018. They got to the final of the Euros this year, and they didn't have all the benefits that a host nation would have. They had to go to Rome for the quarter-final where they rolled over Ukraine quite easily in the end. But if you're a home nation, normally you play your games at home. England did it the hard way. Now might be their time. There will be players who fall by the wayside because you can only fit 22 into a squad. But I think later this year, who knows? Unexpectedly, when no one's expecting anything because the conditions are so outlandish compared to normal. But I think England might surprise us.
That would be nice.
It would
after
indeed.
the Euros.
Happy New Year to you, by the way.
So good. Happy New Year to you, and thanks for talking to us. Aidan McGee there. Always a pleasure. You're watching GB News Live, and next, my new guest is one of the foremost actors of his generation, Peter Egan. Peter has starred in legendary film Chariots of Fire, the sitcom Afterlife with Ricky Gervais, and ITV's crime drama Unforgotten. But most people will also recognise Peter as the Duke of Argyll in Downton Abbey, and his character was seen stalking stags in the Scottish Highlands in the Christmas Day edition of the franchise. However, Peter has now turned his eyes to a very different kind of hunt. He's teamed up with Animal Asia, a sanctuary which rescues bears subjected to appalling cruelty for their bile, which is believed by those in Vietnam to contain mystical medical properties. He's working with 60 global superstars, including Russell Crowe, Judi Dench, Ricky Gervais, of course, who is very strong on animal rights, on the so-called Moon Bear Pledge campaign. It's a great pleasure to welcome Peter Egan now to GB News. Tell us about the campaign, Peter, and a Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you too. Thank you very much. Well, it's a very important campaign, the Moon Bear Pledge, to raise awareness, first of all, for the appalling situation for these wonderful moon bears who in their lives would travel up to 40 miles a day, are kept in cages where they can barely move in order to have their bile extracted. So the imprisonment of these moon bears is absolutely shocking. and it actually it drives them mad eventually. A moon bear can live for 30 years, and to think of a poor bear that would travel 40 miles a day, living in such restrictions, is just shocking. So I love moon bears. I'm an ambassador for Animals Asia, which I think is the most wonderful charity on the planet. And so this is important because they need to build a sanctuary. They have one sanctuary in Vietnam already. There is a commitment to ending bear bile farming in Vietnam this year in 2022. They need to build another sanctuary. So with the 60-plus international names, we're asking for as many people as possible to sign the pledge, to hopefully donate as well, so that we can raise the millions of pounds that need to be raised to build a wonderful sanctuary and give these moon bears the freedom they deserve.
How did you get involved, Peter? Why is it so important to you?
Well, as I've got older, I really am completely committed to the importance of all species on our wonderful planet having the kind of life I would like for myself, which is a life of freedom and as little restriction as possible. And about, I think, 10 to 12 years ago, Jill Robinson, who is the inspiring founder of Animals Asia, got in touch with me and asked me if I'd become an ambassador for the charity. I went out to visit one of their sanctuaries, and I was so overwhelmed by the extraordinary work that they do with these wonderful, humorous moon bears. They're very forgiving, the bears, when you consider what has been done to them by humans. And I was just overwhelmed by the work. The charity really defines for me the very, very meaning of animal welfare / animal rights, and what they give to these bears, the respect they give to these bears, and the enrichment and rehabilitation impressed me so much that I thought this is my number one charity. I'm attached to an awful lot of charities, but this is the number one charity in my life, and I would be attached to them for as long as I can walk about and speak and campaign.
It's difficult not to feel exactly the same as you do, Peter, when you've seen the images of those bears stacked in tight cages whilst their bile is removed. It is quite heartbreaking to view.
Awful, yeah.
You have an adopted bear in the Animals Asia Sanctuary. How did you go about doing that, and can others do the same if they want to help?
Yes, they can. I was given the honour of being a parent, if you like, to Peter Bear. Peter Bear arrived in the sanctuary on the 2 weeks before I arrived, and Peter Bear is 6'6" tall. And when he arrived in the sanctuary, he was in the fetal position. He had grown from a cub into this little cage that I, in fact, couldn't get into myself. And I was just given the honour by the charity to adopt this bear. Other people can adopt it. They get in touch with other bears. They get in touch with Animals Asia. If they just Google them, Animals Asia on Facebook, or follow them on Twitter. There are lots of ways of getting information for them, or if they want to, they can follow me at Peter Egan 6, and I will direct anyone in the right place. And they can sponsor a bear. There are various things that can be done. You can either sponsor a bear and pay for its food on a monthly basis. If you want to adopt a bear, that's a bit more expensive, but then you are responsible, as it were, and attached to that bear for the rest of its life. And that's the most magnificent commitment, I think.
And let's not lose sight of why these bears are put through the awful experiences that they have. It is because their bile is harvested and then ground down into special powders, which in the Far East are seen as some sort of medicinal Viagra.
Yes, it's attached. Well, that's a part of it. It's attached to traditional sort of Southeast Asian medicine. What is very sad is that the bile that is extracted from the bear's gallbladder can be produced synthetically, and it is much better and much purer as a medicine for your joints or whatever it's used for. In fact, the bile that is extracted from these bears so often is contaminated because the open port that they have in their stomachs to their gallbladder gets infected, and it produces a kind of dark liquid that is not really very healthy. I would suggest.
It's really difficult to talk about, isn't it, Peter? It's very, very difficult to describe and to talk about, and I can see you're choosing your words carefully. But I suppose the reason I brought that up is to say that, you know, these powders, the Southeast Asian medicines, are available in the UK. There's a couple of questions here, aren't they? I suppose one would be to smash open the ignorance that leads to this kind of practice, and the other one, of course, is to stop the trade.
Yes, I mean, when you talk about powders, that often is bones that have been crushed up and things like that, and that happens with all forms of wildlife in Southeast Asia and across Africa as well. So, but there is traditional pharma is supposed to be non-invasive, and of course, many people in Southeast Asia take it and believe that it works. Being a Westerner, I prefer to trust Western medicines that have been tried and tested in different ways and are not things apart from animal testing, which I totally abhor and am completely against, which is what happens with the medicines we take. What is strange and what is awful is that most of the things that we humans want for ourselves involves some kind of horror for animals, and that's really something that the 21st century has got to eradicate. We need to be kinder. We need to be kinder to this planet and to all animals, all species on it. Otherwise, we are going to be destroying it and ourselves. And this is one element of it, and a very important element of it, I think.
And it must be acknowledged some people in those areas of the world don't have access to the Western pharmaceutical remedies that we do, and they might argue that they don't have a choice but to go to their local fake dealer and purchase these sorts of powders, which is why I brought up the idea of education, to just educate people about exactly.
I think the only thing, I appreciate that, and I think it's a good point, but one has to be very careful about applying a Western mentality to this, because we get accused of a kind of cultural kind of dominance, and I don't think that's the case, because you know, every country in the world has its greatness. So I just tend to try and avoid a position where I feel I am superior to countries that don't follow the same traditions that I do.
Yeah, I mean, but at the very heart of this, there is a cultural clash, and I suppose we should acknowledge that. Let's talk a little bit about the sort of support you've got now. Who's on your side and helping to spread the message?
Well, I mean, the list is huge. You mentioned some of them. A newly appointed Dame today, Dame Joanna Lumley, who is a wonderful supporter, Leslie Nicole, Matt Sorum, Slash from Guns N' Roses. I mean, it's the most wonderful cocktail of support, and I want very much to increase the support amongst the general public, so that the general public will understand and know more about this and give it our support as well. That's the whole point of having so many international names attached to the Moon Bear Pledge, so that people will look at it, recognize it, and think this is something I would like to support as well. But the list at the moment is just absolutely sensational.
I mean, you missed out some of the big names. I think we mentioned Ricky Gervais, but Paul McCartney, no less.
Absolutely, Paul McCartney. Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Russell Crowe as well.
Russell Crowe, fantastic. Yeah, Ricky Gervais is sensational. I mean, Ricky. I work a lot with him in animal rights areas on many things. He's a remarkable man, Ricky, and he is somebody who talks the talk and walks the walk, and gives his time. An incredibly busy, creative man, but gives his time whenever it's called upon. He's absolutely fantastic, I think.
Peter, we didn't get time to talk about your fantastic achievements in your acting career, but I suppose you'd be the first person to say you'd rather talk about how to save the moon bears. So we'll just leave it at that. Thank you very much for spending some time with us this evening. A happy new year, and do come back and talk to us again soon when you've been able to.
That would be a great pleasure. Happy New Year to you too. Thanks for having me on. Thanks.
You're watching GB News Live. We'll be looking at the new ban for loyalty penalties for car and home insurance customers. Could you find yourself paying more than you thought? All that coming up first, the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking to get off to a mild but breezy and in places very showery start. The southwest of England will begin Sunday dry with some bright spells, although there will be a bit of a southwesterly breeze, which will take the edge off the mild feel. The southeast will be cloudier with quite a gusty wind blowing, and 1 or 2 showers are also on the cards here. Overnight rain will have just cleared to the east of Wales come the morning, and so it's looking mainly dry with the sun appearing in places. A different story, though, as we head to northwest England, as showery rain will still be clearing from these parts, with drier conditions beginning to tuck in from the west. A pretty wet start is likely in Newcastle and the rest of the northeast of England. A few heavy bursts of rain are possible, although here the wind will be a little lighter than elsewhere. Whilst blustery showers are likely towards the north and west, most southern and eastern parts of Scotland should get off to a fine start, with fairly mild temperatures and some sunshine. For Northern Ireland, a mixed bag of weather is expected. There'll be some bright weather, but with a few blustery showers also sweeping in from the west. Through the remainder of the morning, most eastern areas will become dry and bright, whilst further showers feed in across the west.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. Well, it's that time of year when you find yourself paying those new prices, renewing home or car insurance, sometimes rather sharp intake of breath as you see the prices rise. Well, There may be some good news for you. From today, insurance providers will be banned from offering deals that cost more than new customers would pay. Regulators have found that millions of customers were being unfairly charged higher prices, including an extra £1.2 billion in 2018 alone. Research has shown often that many people who don't switch providers, preferring to stay with who they know, end up paying more than those people who come as new customers or on special offers. Well, with us now is the founder of moneymagpie.com, Jasmine Birtles, to see how this could affect customers across the UK. Great to talk to you, Jasmine. Good news then, really, for consumers, this, isn't it?
Yes, it is, basically. The idea of really rewarding loyalty rather than penalising loyalty, I think is absolutely right. That's what all companies should be doing, not just insurance companies. But it's good at least to start here with insurance companies offering car insurance and home insurance.
The FCA dragging their feet a bit on this one, though. It was identified, 10, 15 years ago, this price walking phenomenon, and the industry was quite happy to let it keep going, weren't they?
Absolutely, yes. As you say, people, if you don't actually switch, you would generally find that you would get, as you say, price walking, where each year, for no apparent reason, the insurance company would just up the amount that you pay for your premium. And that's called price walking. And yes, it took a few special requests, really, from organisations like Which, etc., saying, look, this is not fair. This is not right. It's not right that somebody, a new person, should be offered fabulous deals when somebody who's been loyal to the company has been offered far worse premiums than they were before. So I think it's a good thing to do. The only problem now, of course, is that a lot of I think really we're going to move towards the middle. So a lot of the really good deals that you used to be able to get if you would switch will probably go. They probably have already gone, frankly. So it's not going to be so good if you are a switcher, which, for example, I am. There will still be the opportunity to switch. There will still, I think, be probably better deals than you're currently getting because there's competition in the market. But there won't be those fantastic introductory offers that there were before.
So you could characterise it as punishing the financially savvy?
You could, yes, absolutely. You could say we're giving more money to the people who are loyal or possibly lazy, let's be honest, and making it a little harder for the financially savvy. But I think, even the financially savvy would prefer not to have the nuisance of switching. They would prefer to have a company that gives them a fair, decent deal every time, every year. That's what most of us would prefer. Because although I say to people, do shop around, and it's a good idea with most things to shop around, if you can find that your current provider offers you something great, well, happy days, frankly. You don't have to go through the nuisance of filling in more forms, switching around, etc.
So, Jasmine, you've had a good look at this. It affects both home insurance and car insurance. Is that all?
Sadly, at the moment, yes, that is all. I would like to see it spread out to mobile phones, television packages, internet packages, all sorts, because, it's the same with all sorts of providers. They penalise loyalty, and all they're really interested in is bringing in people, new people, so they can tick that box. It's, the marketing departments, basically. They are all powerful, it seems, in a lot of these companies. And so I would like to see this spread across not just other types of insurance, but all sorts of utilities, so that we can have proper loyalty and that we can, as individuals, as consumers, frankly, get on with our lives rather than having to keep looking around to find a better deal.
That's what we've seen, isn't it, in other parts of the shopping industry. You don't really get penalised by supermarkets, for example. They have a loyalty point scheme. There's two ways to do this. Do you think that the marketing companies and insurance companies will see the more positive reinforcement of loyalty?
Well, I would have thought so. I mean, something that I've been saying for years is, look, it is actually cheaper for companies to keep their current customers rather than put lots of effort and money into a marketing campaign, advertising campaign to get new customers. It doesn't make sense. You're better off, I would have thought, keeping your current customers happy, keeping them on side, rather than trying to get new people in. The only issue here, of course, is that certainly with insurance and with quite a lot of utilities, inertia means that a good or third or a half of us tend not to move, even though we're being charged more. We kind of can't be bothered, or we mean to do it, and you just don't get around to it, etc., etc. So they do know that doing nothing, they can still keep quite a lot of their loyal customers. But doing just a little bit, they could keep the rest as well. And that seems to me like a good business plan.
And in terms of how we sit in a European setting, if you like, what are the penalties in other countries? Do they have price walking policies as well, or have they decided to clamp down on them as our Financial Conduct Authority has here?
Oh, that's a very good question, and something I should look into, actually. Certainly,
sorry to put you on the spot.
It's not something that's talked about a lot. Although in America, we've got a lot of the American ideas. So in America, this is the way that it happens. You know, you're trying to get new customers all the time, and new customers are given, you know, the good deals. It's kind of a marketing thing. My suspicion for most of Europe is that people don't move very much, and that generally speaking, I would assume, certainly in the northern countries, that there's some sort of dampening, if you like, of competition there. But it's a good question. I shall look into it, because it would be good to be able to say, see, in France they do, you know, X, Y, Z.
So this coming into effect from today, am I correct? What are you expecting to see this year in terms of changes in the industry then as a result?
Well, I do think that this is a sea change in the way that insurance companies are going to be forced to think. And I think that they will probably try and spread this out to other types of insurance, like travel insurance, maybe life insurance. That's a whole different thing, really. But it's quite possible that we will see this moving there, because they will assume that because it's been done for car and home insurance, which, by the way, has the most, those two have the most amount of competition around them, that they will assume that it's going to be spread out to the others. So they might sort of preempt it and make sure that loyal customers for their travel insurance are dealt with properly as well. I'm just assuming this. I don't know, but if I were them, that's what I'd be doing.
Jasmine Birtles, great pleasure to talk to you. You go and do your research on Europe then, and possibly come back to us with some reflections on that later on. But for the moment, thanks very much, and Happy New Year to you.
And you, thanks.
Now, it is New Year's Day today, of course, which means New Year's resolutions. Do you have any? Arguably, the most common resolution you do hear about from people in the coming weeks is to get fitter, to control food, perhaps get a bit healthier. People up and down the country banking on some new diet, a new workout machine, or some extreme 30-day programme to make up for the countless takeaways or trips to fast food joints. But is that the best way to get fit? And how do we actually stick to a New Year's resolution? Well, we've got a sporting legend and fitness expert to help us, none other than former Olympic swimmer Sharon Davis, speaking to us now. Sharon, first of all, Happy New Year to you. What advice?
Oh, thank you very much, and to you too.
Thank you. What advice would you give to people then hoping to lose weight and get fitter in 2022?
So it takes about 3 months to make or break a habit. So you've got to be looking at about 12 weeks of a program to hopefully build a new exercise habit. Now, obviously, the quickest way to do exercise is probably like a HIIT workout, high intensity interval training session, which you can take about 15, 20 minutes, or you can go for walks, you can go for swims, you can get on your bike. There's so many different things that are available. It's about trying to find things that you enjoy, because obviously if you enjoy it, you're more likely to do it. And secrets are sometimes find a friend that wants to do it with you, because obviously they can cajole you along when you're not feeling up to it as well. Try really hard to stick to a routine. You know, that 3 month secret is really just about making it past that stage so you've got a habit that you enjoy. It's I'm very grateful that obviously I spent years of my life training, and I think that's put this groundwork in that I enjoy exercise because I enjoy what it gives me. The endorphins that it releases is good for your immune system. You know, it's the happy hormones. It's just very, very good for our health. It decreases pain. It regulates our diet, you know, and it makes us feel better. So not only is physical activity good for our bodies, of course, it's incredibly good for our minds as well.
And you mentioned that 3-month window to really change your mind about habits, behaviour, and in fact to get the reward of having lost weight and get fitter. But of course, there is that 10-day barrier, isn't there? There's a long time before the 3 months is up. People are generally quite good at sticking to their new regimes for about 10 days, then they get thoroughly fed up and give in. Are they doing too much too soon?
Yeah, absolutely. I heard you mention in the intro as well about, you know, going crazy for 30 days. And it's the going crazy thing which doesn't work terribly well. It's about having a long-term goal. So hopefully it's about changing habits forever. Things like reducing alcohol, which all of us do in January, because that's where we've put the weight on often at Christmas. Here's a really little interesting statistic for you. 1 bottle of wine per week is 48 Big Macs over the space of a year. And 5 pints, I think it's something over 200 donuts. So we often don't count the calories that we're consuming in liquids. So that's a really good start. Try not to eat late because you're laying down those calories on your stomach before you go to bed, which slows our metabolism down. And exercise is what increases our metabolism and makes it work, you know, better and more efficiently. Sadly, once you get to about 50, we have what's called muscle atrophy, which basically just means muscle loss. So we have to work harder to maintain our muscles. And our muscles give us stability. They support our joints, particularly as we age, because we end up with arthritis. These are just things which come as we get older, sadly, you know, particularly athletes, because we wear joints out as well. So balance is really important, and core stability. So the great news is that once you've created that habit, it's much easier to have it. There's lots of things out there available at the moment. I've just been working for the last 6 months putting together a program of my own online. So I'm really excited about that. But habit. Create the habit and try to do it through lots of little changes, like not eating late, reducing your alcohol, and refined sugars. You know, the one thing in our diet that has no nutritional value whatsoever. So the more you can reduce the refined sugars, the better.
You know who was just ambling in the background there, just as you were chatting away? Your little dog in the background, taking a nap behind you. And it just made me think... I just made me think about dog walking. You know, that's a great way to lose weight, isn't it? Just walking with your dog.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do need to get our heart rate up. So, you know, sometimes I see people who have these wonderful steppers on their wrists and they're walking around their beds trying to get in their, 10,000 steps before they go to bed at nighttime. And I can honestly say with my hand on the heart, it's probably not going to make an awful lot of difference, because you do need to raise your heart rate to improve the capacity of your lungs and to get your heart working better. So perfect solution is a mixture of all the different types of exercise: cardiovascular exercise, which is heart and lung exercise, raising your pulse rate; lifting weights, which is great for osteoporosis and muscle loss; then stretching and mobility, which is really important; and then in strength and extension. So that's why ballerinas, for example, are so wonderfully fit. Things like wall sit, you know, where you stand up against a wall, imagine that you're skiing and you just hold it for as long as you can. So that's strength and extension work. So there's different types of exercise that you can do. The perfect solution is all of them, but we're all time poor. So if you can manage 4 times 50 minutes of a HIIT workout per week, that's just 1 hour. I promise you, after 3 months, it will make a difference.
What's the Sharon Davis routine daily then? How many times a week do you work out?
Not anything crazy. You know, obviously, way back, I deposited a lot of exercise hours in that body. I was doing 6 hours a day when I was younger to do my sport. So it does remember without a shadow of a doubt. Nowadays, I probably get to the gym 3 times a week. I love doing my little HIIT workout as well. I've messed up my knees doing gladiators. I've got no cruciates left in my right knee. And then 2 years ago, Mr. Daley Thompson knocked me on my bike and broke my leg very badly. So I'm now steel from my hip to my knee. So I don't do an awful lot of high impact exercise. But I try to get to the gym if I can to do sort of 3 workouts a week. Love to walk the dogs, like you said. Got an 18-month-old granddaughter that just exhausts me. Getting out in the fresh air, you know, is another thing which is really good for our brains as well. I can absolutely promise you that you will feel better about yourself if you exercise. It's really underrated, the natural feel-good hormones. They are personal, natural antidepressants that we produce when we exercise.
But in terms of dropping weight, which makes exercise harder, if you're overweight, it's harder to exercise. In terms of dropping weight, it's not just about exercise, is it? It is about what you put in your mouth.
Absolutely about what we put in our mouth. You know, it has to be a combination of the two. In fact, you have to do a huge amount of cardiovascular exercise to lose pounds of fat. And here's another really interesting statistic for you. 1 pound of fat reduces 4 pounds of pressure on your knees and 6 pounds of pressure on your hips. You know, as we age, obviously, knees and hips, shoulders, those joints are always the ones that give us the most amount of stress and pain. So maintaining the muscle strength around the joints will help hugely, and reducing our weight down to a sensible amount will make life so much easier. So eat colourful, reduce the calories. It's calories in versus calories out. It's a fairly straightforward equation, and try not to eat late and try to reduce the alcohol and the refined sugars. So simple little rules are the easiest ones to actually live with. When I first stopped swimming, I put 3 stone on. And for about 2 years, I yo-yo dieted, and I absolutely hated it. I hated eating grapefruit only all day and keeping food diaries, and I got obsessed with food, and it made me very, very depressed, to be honest with you. So I think it's this mixture of long-term goals, sensible eating, and finding an exercise habit.
And I think people will be sat at home listening to you thinking, yep, I've got to do that. I've got to eat colourful. I've got to go out walking the dog a bit more. And it's all in your mind as exactly what you want to do, but we all know what happens. People fall off the wagon and they just lose that enthusiasm. What can people do to make sure they stay on the wagon? And more importantly than that, Sharon, if you fall off the wagon, is that it? Or should you just dust yourself down and get back up on again?
Absolutely not. You know, nothing is wasted. So no amount of effort that you put into exercise is a wasted, operation. It's all a positive thing. So we all have swings and roundabouts. We all kind of go up and down with regards to our commitment and how much time we've got available. My program, for example, is only 4 times 15 minutes a week. So you can do it anywhere, anytime. You don't need any equipment whatsoever, and you get to work out with me. So I don't believe that anyone can't find 1 hour a week to exercise across the whole week, you know? So it is about prioritizing a little bit and saying, actually, this is valuable time spent on making myself feel better physically and mentally. So do that. Prioritize what you're doing. Do not chastise yourself if you fall off the wagon a little bit. Give yourself rewards every once in a while. I'm not saying for one moment that you shouldn't touch wine and beer. Probably maybe January you might want to if you've overdosed over the Christmas period. But actually giving yourself those little treats at weekends, you know, there's really nothing wrong with that. It's about having a little bit of chocolate, not several bars. It's about maybe having a very small glass of wine instead of a bottle, and maybe mix it, you know, and mix it with fizzy water or something. Find ways to reduce the calories. I mean, I drink way too many probably diet drinks, but for me, that's a way that I can, you know, keep my calorie content down. And I try very hard to eat colourful. I think the more colourful your plate is, the less vanilla, the less magnolia it is, the better the food is for you, because it's got high fibre content, which is great for your gut, and low calories.
It's great to hear all that, Sharon, and we're nearly out of time. But just to sort of underline, I think one thing we haven't mentioned, it is hard. Expect that it is hard. You do have to be disciplined, something that we're not perhaps very good at these days.
Anything that's worth having, you know, is worth working for. Sadly, obesity rates are going up. Diabetes rates are going up. We know this is a huge challenge for all of us, a very big challenge for children. It worries me terribly that we are bringing, you know, large numbers of children through that have weight problems, and we are setting our kids up to have weight issues all the way through their life if we can't teach them the habits when they're young. So this is really important, and something that I know that I'm going to be trying to badger the government on this coming year, that we have more physical activity in schools and we can better educate our kids about what they eat, how much they eat, and how much physical activity they have.
We look forward to seeing that. Do come back and tell us more when you start that campaign. But for the moment, Sharon
Thank you.
Thank you so much for such lovely common sense.
Thank you. Good luck, everybody.
And thanks for your superstar in the background. What's your dog's name?
That's Eddie, and also there's a rather large basset hound just lying here that you can't see him. So I have a basset hound and a dash hound, Eddie and Flash.
Eddie and Flash, thanks very much. Sharon, thanks very much. Happy New Year to you all. Thank you.
Welcome. Happy New Year, everybody.
Still to come on GB News Live, we'll take a look through the biggest moments from the world of politics in 2021 and let us know what your memorable moments were. You can always get in touch. GBViews@gbnews.uk. First, though, let's take a look at that unseasonably mild weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking to get off to a mild but breezy and in places very showery start. The southwest of England will begin Sunday dry with some bright spells, although there will be a bit of a southwesterly breeze, which will take the edge off the mild feel. The southeast will be cloudier with quite a gusty wind blowing, and 1 or 2 showers are also on the cards here. Overnight rain will have just cleared to the east of Wales come the morning, and so it's looking mainly dry with the sun appearing in places. A different story, though, as we head to northwest England, as showery rain will still be clearing from these parts, with drier conditions beginning to tuck in from the west. A pretty wet start is likely in Newcastle and the rest of the northeast of England. A few heavy bursts of rain are possible, although here the wind will be a little lighter than elsewhere. Whilst blustery showers are likely towards the north and west, most southern and eastern parts of Scotland should get off to a fine start, with fairly mild temperatures and some sunshine. For Northern Ireland, a mixed bag of weather is expected. There'll be some bright weather, but with a few blustery showers also sweeping in from the west. Through the remainder of the morning, most eastern areas will become dry and bright, whilst further showers feed in across the west.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
You're watching GB News. Thank you for watching us this New Year's Day. Happy New Year to you. I'm Polly Middlehurst, and coming up this hour, we're rounding up all the political highlights of 2021 with Young Voices commentator Connor Tomlinson. And after that, Alex Phillips will be looking back at the big issues we needed to talk about last year. No subject, as you know, with Alex is off limits. But first, let's get back up to date with the latest news. Here's Karen Roberts.
Thank you, Polly. Here are the latest headlines. Health bosses are warning the next few days are crucial in the fight to reduce the impact of the Omicron variant. Chris Hobson, the chief executive of NHS providers, says the health system is under arguably more pressure compared with this time last year. COVID measures must be an absolute last resort in 2022, according to the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid. Over 162,000 COVID-19 cases have been recorded in England, a new daily record. Medical experts leading the UK's battle against COVID are among more than 1,200 people who have been recognised in the Queen's New Year Honours List. Knighthoods have been given to the UK's Chief Medical Advisor, Professor Chris Whitty, and his deputy, Jonathan Van Tam, as well as the Chief Medical Officers for Scotland and Wales for their efforts in the fight against COVID. Meanwhile, Sir Patrick Vallance, the UK government's chief scientific advisor, has been elevated to Knight Commander of the Order of the Bath, and tennis player Emma Raducanu and diver Tom Daley will both receive MBEs. Separately from the main New Year Honours list, Buckingham Palace has announced that Tony Blair will also receive awards from Her Majesty the Queen. The former Prime Minister has been made a Knight Companion of the Most Noble Order of the Garter. One of his former cabinet ministers, Lady Amos, joins him and has become the first ever black member of the order, while the Duchess of Cornwall has been recognised for her contribution to the monarchy, being appointed Royal Lady of the Most Noble Order of the Garter. The official state funeral for Archbishop Desmond Tutu has taken place in South Africa. Mourners gathered in Cape Town to pay their respects to the late Nobel Peace Prize winner, who for years fought against racial injustice. President Cyril Ramaphosa, who delivered the main eulogy, paid tribute to his friend.
If Archbishop Desmond Tutu were here, he would have said, "Hey, why are you looking so glum, so unhappy?" He would have wanted to elicit a smile, a laughter from amongst all of us. That was the type of person that he was.
And Boris Johnson says he wants to maximise the benefits of Brexit this year. That's despite consumers being warned of fresh disruption due to new rules coming into force. From today, traders will no longer be able to delay completing full import customs declarations on goods entering the UK from the EU or other countries. Previously, they had a grace period of 175 days, but the British Frozen Food Federation has warned consumers to brace for disruption due to the change. Well, that's your news update. I'll be back at the top of the hour. Now back to Polly.
You're with GB News this New Year's Day. I'm Polly Middlehurst and this is GB News Live. Well, 2021 saw some of the biggest news stories in British politics of the modern era, from the success of the vaccine rollout following the coronavirus outbreak to the G7 summit in Cornwall, claims of Tory sleaze and Christmas party scandals. Then, of course, the mixed reception to COP26 in Glasgow and the Commons' COVID rebellions by the Prime Minister's own backbench MPs. Not to mention a disastrous by-election result for Boris Johnson just last month. It's all culminated in an apparent poll slump for the Conservatives and a boost for Labour. Let's talk about that now and look back at 2021 to discuss the moments that could define the year. Political commentator Connor Tomlinson joins us. Very warm welcome to you and Happy New Year to you as well. An extraordinary year that
Happy New Year.
Really, Connor, isn't it?
Well, it's astounding we survived it, wasn't it? It was a pretty strange one to have gone through. I think this and 2022, to look at stories both retrospectively and perhaps what's going to be the most important in the year to come, it's probably best to look at it almost like a Cold War conflict brewing, because you've got the UK and the US taking flagship on a lot of mainly the UK's domestic stories, and then the US sort of electoral stuff, and there's question as the global hegemonic superpower on the world stage. And then you've got China and Russia looming with their, obviously the Winter Olympics coming up. There's going to be a lot surrounding that, and obviously questions about energy security as it comes to COP27 when it comes towards the end of the year. Another big party that probably won't achieve all that much.
About domestically, looking at Keir Starmer, has he presented himself, do you think, as a credible leader of the opposition?
I don't think Angela Rayner would say so, because he seems to have a knack for not telling her all that much. I think Keir Starmer has done perhaps even the smart thing in what we saw a massive poll boost when he took a bout of self-isolation. He stopped stepping on rakes as he did in 2020 a little bit with sort of BLM taking the knee and then stepping back on the defunding the police narrative. And then he didn't show up to some of the by-elections in Bexley, where I am, and then in North Shropshire. He was a decidedly absent presence. And Labour didn't make many gains in there. It was actually the Lib Dems who seem to be masters of the protest vote at this point. They don't seem to be wanting to make much of a stand at a national election because they don't have much of a standpoint of what they want to go on as a post rejoin the EU disastrous campaign that Joe Swinson ran in 2019. But they do seem to be wanting to challenge the Tories. I know the current leader said he wanted to challenge Dominic Raab's constituency quite prominently next time in the year to come. So I don't think Keir Starmer's really the man to win Labour any elections. I think he's the sort of person that at the moment is very much of the doctrine, don't interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake.
You say that, but Labour has the biggest lead since 2014, a 9-point lead at the beginning of December, just looking at my figures now. And even just up to 4 days ago, Labour on 39%, 7 points ahead of the Conservatives. If he's no good, how come?
Because I think the Tories have committed suicide, and unlike the brilliantly politically enlightened viewers of GB News, there are quite a few people out there that watch a lot of mainstream media and will treat politics like it's a football team. So if one side's losing, let's go with the second best one that might be seeming to score some fun goals. So people don't really seem to understand that Labour isn't providing much of a principled opposition. They're not much of an opposition party at all, voting with the Tory government on pretty much every restriction they're going to do. In fact, the only tenable opposition seems to be the backbenchers at this point. Though I do think it's quite an interesting point that Boris is being staved off future restrictions, because my prediction would be that he sees a defeat in the Commons if he goes to push another lockdown with current statistics. I think Labour are very happy they've got vaccine passports as a predicate for future policy, but now they see it as safe to rebel. So again, it doesn't seem that Labour is going to be a tenable opposition. It seems that they're winning points by default because the Tories under Boris's leadership are being very unpopular at the moment.
And is that what we saw in the Shropshire North result, do you think?
I would say so. I mean, you didn't have many tenable Tory voters coming out and turning out. The same thing with Bexley. There were a lot of people that just stayed home. They voted for the Lib Dems, mainly a protest vote. Quite a few people were saying that in various interviews across the newspapers. And then you saw actually gains for reform in Bexley as a sort of Tory alternative. Obviously, Bexley's been quite a staunch sort of centre-right seat. I mean, they voted for UKIP pretty early on, and it was definitely a heavy Leave seat, despite it being on the cusp of London. So I think people are going to start to look for alternatives and even lifelong Tory voters. I mean, I know some people in my family that used to go before. My dad, for example, he always said, before I voted sort of tactically of who I thought would win, but now I'm just going to vote on principle because I can't trust that they're not going to get in and just go against what they said in the first place. So I'd rather my vote counted and made an alternative party viable than just vote for the bigger guy.
And we all remember watching the Lib Dems burst that Boris bubble as they did when they won North Shropshire. Vince Cable on this station talking about Lib Dems making it back into the mainstream once again. Your views on that?
I think there's some pretty high hopes from Vince Cable there. I'd say the Lib Dems are being principled at least on COVID lockdowns. I think that's winning them some brownie points with at least the anti-lockdown pushback crew. But frankly, in the general election standpoint, what do they particularly stand for? I mean, the last time that you had a tenable Lib Dem election leader was Nick Clegg, and then obviously he went back on all of his promises on the student loans thing, and now he's leading one of the most unpopular companies in the world, Facebook, because they're sort of trust and safety executive and not doing a very good job of that. So the Lib Dems' reputation seems to be in tatters. I think that what they could do actually is to make themselves more electorally palatable. I know we've got the Beijing Olympics coming up. If they become, as has happened on your network with some Lib Dem politicians, a bit more of a stalwart voice on China and leading not just a diplomatic but a sort of financial and cultural rebellion against the country, I think that post-COVID would put them in a much stronger light.
And getting away from domestic politics for a bit, you've already started to do that, moving to the international stage. What about Afghanistan, that retreat from Afghanistan? Done so hastily, and it says, and we're told by many of the senior military personnel within the British Armed Forces, that it was done at the behest of Joe Biden without much communication with the Brits. What did you make of that in terms of the geopolitical significance of that decision?
I don't think Joe Biden's the best man to look to for competent communication. Let's be honest, I don't even know he thinks he's made it to the next year. Biden's poll numbers will continue to be in free fall from that, and also in terms of energy security. And that's also a very important question, again, coming back to something like China and Russia. In this global vying for resource dominance, as we seem to go more towards renewables, Afghanistan's got massive lithium deposits. China already makes 80% of battery capacity worldwide, and that's who most of us rely on for our cars, our solar panels, our power stations. So if China goes in and subsumes that with their Belt and Road Initiative, their imperialistic ambitions in the African subcontinent and the Middle East, well, that will prove disastrous for all of us. And it means that the global hegemony of America, the sort of making the world safe for democracy doctrine that George Bush started 20 years ago, with that receding, it means that other countries will start looking to places like China for infrastructure loans and get hooked on that. And so the sides in this coming Cold War will begin to ossify, and America will look quite weak.
Some analysts say that China's not interested in the traditional kind of confrontational, warlike postures of previous nations, and they're just getting on with their own form of domination with a sort of soft colonialisation. What do you make of that?
That's very true. So their Silk and Road Initiative is basically giving loans to countries that are looking for infrastructural development and then bringing them into their social credit system. They want a digital Silk Road. So by making countries default on their loans, they're just snatching up territory like it's a monopoly board. And then they're also doing this thing called fifth generational warfare. This is why they own companies like TikTok, or they own cultural institutions like video game companies. And this is why in their own country they've banned video games and banned what they would like to call effeminate male celebrities and things like that. They're trying to ossify their population as being very strong and stalwart and obedient to the Chinese Communist Party, but then they're doing what Yuri Bezmenov called in the USSR in the late 80s, early 90s, was ideological subversion. They're trying to infiltrate the culture of other countries, weaken their morale, incite domestic tensions between politics, and so that means that they win by default. And it clearly, in some sad way, is working. Because one, we're committing sort of environmental suicide in rushing forward into renewables and buying all of the technology that China makes. And also, we've just made it so that during the pandemic, we've rewarded China for unleashing COVID on us, because now we've replaced Germany with China as our leading trade exporter, and that's where we buy all our tests, our masks, etc. China are getting very rich, and we're tearing ourselves apart at their behest.
A quick word about COP26, a yes or a no, is it worth it?
The fringe events were very much worth it. I was in attendance. I spoke to quite a few politicians and industry experts, and they seemed very happy with the sort of business market-led approach. But the main halls where they had the Little Amal refugee activism and Greta Thunberg screaming and crying in the streets and that, no. Again, China, Russia, etc., they won't be abiding by these commitments. And so it seems to be Britain's the sacrificial lamb to tank our economy for 1% of emissions when China's going to have to do a 16-fold by 2030. Seems pretty silly.
Connor Tomlinson, an interesting point of view. Great to hear what you think about what's been happening in the political and international environment over the last year. Speak to you again very soon. In the meantime, Happy New Year.
You too.
You're watching GB News Live, and coming up, we'll have more information for you on all the events that have been happening on the international stage and nationally throughout 2021. But coming up next, our very own Alex Phillips in her show We Need to Talk about 2021, an Opinions No Hold Bars special. First, it's time to look at that unseasonably mild English weather for New Year.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.